Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Line Media XM webinar. And today we're going to talk about built to be remembered, the real cost and ROI of experiential marketing. Because let's be honest, there's always someone that is C-level or bean counters or someone at the company, agency, brand that you're working with, and they're always asking the same question. How much did we spend and where is it all going? And that's what we're here to educate you on and let you understand truly where ROI exists in experiential marketing. My name is Troy Hughes. I am business development executive at Line Media. For the last 20 years, I was in radio, and let's just be honest, I got really tired of waking up at 3:30 in the morning. So I wanted to do something a little different. And I decided to take the engagement I used in an audible world and use it more in the visual world. So now I live and breathe the experiential world here at Line Media. And joining me today is Piper.
Hi, I'm Piper O'Cray. I'm a sales account manager at Lime. So my role is really to make sure that your creative idea actually survives whenever it goes into the real world. So Troy comes to me with a big idea and I tell him what it's going to cost and how we can actually make it happen in the real world.
Exactly. And by the way, just a quick background about Line Media in case not everyone is up to speed about who we are and what we do. We've been around for over 20 years. And as you can see on the screen right here, we have done thousands of projects, and we actually fully own and insure, get this, over 250 vehicles. So it is pretty impressive, the stuff that we do here at Line Media, as we are full turnkey from ideation to activation to production, everything in between. So so let's go and continue as we go on here. And by the way, we want everyone to get involved in this webinar today. So basically, what we're looking for is everyone to be involved in the uncomfortable ROI poll. So Piper, if you don't mind, go ahead and jump in here a little bit to describe the poll that we want everyone to engage with today.
Yeah, so this poll, really think of it, the question is, whenever leadership or your client asks you what you received for your money, which answer do you feel like is the hardest to defend? Is it attendance, impressions, sales, leads, or all of the above? Just go ahead and drop your answer, and then we'll come back to this in a little bit and see what everybody said.
Yeah, absolutely. And also not just the poll that we want you to engage with, but also we want to answer your questions as well. This is not a half-hour infomercial for Line Media. We want to actually engage with you. So go ahead and drop your questions into the chat as well, and we'll get to those at the end of this webinar. And by the way, talking about some of the brands, you can see them here on the screen. Piper, go ahead and dive in here about who we serve here at Line Media.
Yeah, so Lime Media, we've been in business, like Troy said, for over 20 years now, and we do 300 to 400 projects a year. So these are some of the main brands that we've served, but we have seen literally anything from like a really small startup company in fashion all the way up to a really huge bank. So all of that in between, we work with both agencies and brands, and we just get to see so much because this is literally all we do all day, every day.
Yeah, a lot of things we get to see. And because of that, it's all about the experiences. And that's why we want to talk about that return on investment when it comes to experiential marketing, when we're creating these experiences. So really, there are 5 kinds of returns when we're talking about the experiential side of Line Media and the brands and agencies you're working with. So Piper, we'll start with number 1, attention.
Yeah, first is attention. Pretty obvious. What is going to cause somebody to stop before a brand ambassador even says anything? So a good example of this is the Jameson purse that we did. It's a driving purse. So obviously anyone is going to see it and be like, what is that, before a brand ambassador even has to call them in that direction.
Exactly.
Is interaction. So that's more of a, what are the demos or the games or the conversations and dwell that's going to turn somebody not into just a passerby, but actually a participant in the activation.
And then, of course, number 3, you have content, and really the creators and the UGCs and the PR imagery. That's also really important when it comes to return on investment. And then go and talk about the last 2, trial and data, which is always a really big point as well.
Yeah, trial is more of the sampling or the education piece. What is it that you want your consumers to actually leave with? Is it knowing more about your brand? Is it having a new product to sample? And then obviously you want them to leave with the confidence to either share this on socials or purchase something leaving the activation. And then the fifth is kind of the biggest hot topic, I think, in the industry right now is data. So scans, registrations, promo codes, surveys, and then audience information so that your activation can actually continue to live on, not just the day that you're live.
Yeah, I think for many, many years in experiential marketing, it was always, I love this word, Instagrammable moments, because everyone really, they were judging ROI on the images that were being taken and what was going to go viral online. And now it's true impressions tracking and scans and signups and codes and everything you talk about data tracking. That's where you're really getting true ROI. That's definitely the most important one. And with that, the latest research says it all. 61% more inclined to buy, 62% report purchase, but here's the biggest one of all, 74% tell other people. That's what the latest research shows here at Live Media when we're talking about ROI. Now, let's go and dive into some of these incredible experiences we've been truly fortunate to be a part of. And number one, we're going to start with Olivia Rodrigo. This was an excellent activation. Took the country by storm. Not this last album, but her previous album, Guts, when it dropped. Go and talk a little bit about that as well, Piper.
Yeah, and these case studies are not for us to just hype up Lime. So I'm going to try to just share what the outcome was, even though we could probably talk about how cool the build itself was. But Olivia Rodrigo, very high level. This is a clamshell school bus. And the main point of this, or the return on investment that it would be, is that it turned one experience into a nationally earned reach. So we hit 45 cities. We had 81,000 attendees. We had 90 million plus earned media impressions. And then we also won some awards for best mobile marketing on this. But the big really ROI from this tour was, again, that it turned one experience into a nationally earned reach.
Yeah, exactly. A media engine per se, just this one experience. And it was everywhere for a long time. Now, this is always something that kind of calls to me because I'm a sneakerhead. So when we decided to do the activation with Team Epiphany and Air Jordan for the release at ComplexCon, this was a fantastic activation as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then when it comes to this kind of activation, what you really want to know is that it's about the smarter placement lowered the cost of reaching high qualified consumers. What that really means is that we took this activation, which by the way, we quick turned 3 fully branded 53-foot semis in 18 days. So that was really quick for us. But as opposed to Olivia Rodrigo, where we basically did this activation that was a national tour, we had the ROI here of, like I mentioned, a smarter placement lowered the cost of reaching highly qualified consumers. That one placement was ComplexCon, because that's where the ROI was at. It was involved with those that were attending that one large scale event. That's why we had a record 70,000 attendees for this activation. And then next, American Eagle. We go from one pop superstar in Olivia Rodrigo to a country superstar in Ella Langley, right?
Yeah, and this one really shows how you can take maybe not the largest footprint, but you can still have a huge outperforming experience. So I think a lot of times when people are like, I need crazy ROI, that means you have to spend a ton of money, not just on the build, but on your 50 by 50 space. This was more of a modest footprint, but it went viral and literally had Ella Langley at it. And this is a really good, thought-provoking and like inspiring activation of how can I take maybe a smaller footprint, but make it feel really premium so that it can go viral in its own way.
I'm really glad you pointed that out. And by the way, want to make sure everyone understands, we'd love for you to get involved in this. Go ahead and interact with the poll that you see on your screen and drop in your questions. We're going to get to the questions at the end of this so we can really, truly engage with everyone involved. But I love what you said there about ROI. Most people, when they hear the 3 letters ROI, they think it has to be a big spectacle. Like we have to create something that is like a 60 by 40 footprint that has a bunch of semi trucks and has lasers and lights and smokes and mirrors. It's not always the case, right? When you use something like this in a smaller footprint.
Yep, totally.
And then of course, We do get to a bigger footprint. Obviously, Jameson. I got really stoked, by the way, last week. I know Piper saw this as well, but the NFL officially announced Jameson as the spirit of the NFL. And this is a true activation when it comes to ROI. And basically, the one thing that you want to reach out here is when you're talking about this kind of activation on a much larger, grander scale, correct?
Yeah, and this one is a really good example, again, kind of similar to Olivia Rodrigo, where it ended up reaching so many different people. Like this Jameson activation was 2 years ago now, and then they just announced that they're the official spirit of the NFL. And so it kind of shows how you could take one footprint and capitalize on your audience so that you can actually catapult into a much wider campaign. So that was pretty cool. I've never tried Jameson, but now I'm like, I probably should. I talk about it all the time. So,
you know what? If you're going to try Jameson, I want to make sure all the guys are around and all the girls are around too, because that would be one heck of a day to see that. I think the other point about this, and we're also going to talk about this as well when we talk about Blue Diamond and the almond. These two different projects that we did and with the brands that we worked with and the agencies we worked with, it's really about reusing what we had in order to create these experiences. And what I mean by reusing, I don't mean by repurposing, but going back to Jameson, we reused this for tailgates in Tampa and in Las Vegas. Like you mentioned, expanding this activation to get the ROI that was needed. And kind of set you up here for the Blue Diamond. This was a fantastic one as well. And talk about the ROI that can come from something like this.
yeah, Blue Diamond Almond, this is what we call a special project. So the way I describe it is we're taking something that has never existed before and we're building it for the first time. This was a larger investment. It took over 1,000 hours in labor just to build. But this vehicle itself was the campaign. So this is on a multi-year lease with Inspira Marketing, and it is going across the country as their whole campaign. So obviously somebody sees an almond driving down the road, shooting out almonds, and they're like, what is this and how do I get it? And then suddenly they're in the store buying Blue Diamond Almond.
Exactly. Now let's kind of set everyone up for success, because we're really going to peel back the curtain a little bit, because you've been so grateful with your time to join us. And we're going to get to your questions in the poll in a second, but we're going to peel back the curtain a little bit and share with you what it actually drives costs when it comes to these experiences. And number one, obviously, is the asset. The vehicles. I talked about Lime Media. We own and operate 250 plus vehicles. And that's really where costs are driven at the very beginning. What vehicle are we using? Are we doing a stage trailer? Are we using a Airstream, a gull-winged Airstream, a step van? You start with that, and then you go into the complexity, the fabrication. Are we simply wrapping this vehicle? Okay, but are we doing a true build out? Are we doing millwood? Are we doing chrome? What kind of production will go into this? That also truly drives the numbers up when you're looking at the cost. And then Piper, go and talk about the time, tour, and activation as well.
Yeah, and this conversation as an account manager, I probably have more than any other conversation in my life here at Lime. So, time and tour is a huge part and the biggest drive in cost when it comes to doing a mobile tour like this. So how long you're going to be on the road and where you're going is going to play just a huge role in your overall costs. If we're going from Dallas to New York to California to Miami to Seattle, then you're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars just on transport to get this where it needs to go. Whereas if we're choosing maybe a more central region like the Northeast or the West Coast, then we can kind of capitalize a little bit more on where you're going and making sure you're getting the most juice. The juice is worth the squeeze, so to say. But your time and your tour, where you're going, definitely plays a huge role. Like I said, if you're going across the country, then that's going to eat up a huge part of your cost.
Exactly. That kind of goes into, what we do here at Lime. As I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, we do the ideation, the production, and of course the activation. Our account managers on their side, they're going to work with you when it comes to these tours and these locations you're going to. And yeah, the last thing we want to do is go from New York to LA to Miami to Idaho. Who's in Idaho? I don't know. But anyway, you don't want to be jumping around the country. You want to know where your ROI is going. And that's why it's strategic to stay in a certain area most of the time when you're thinking about ROI. Yeah. Also, go ahead.
I've been there too. It really depends on where you're wanting to put your money, because we do have brands and agencies that are like, hey, I do want to do a national tour and spend tens of thousands to go across the country. And so great, there's an understanding that you might have to compromise on the build or how big of a footprint you're going to have. But I would say it's not, do you not want to go across the country? It's more, where do you want to spend the most money?
Exactly, exactly. And then location is a big one as well. And then POP. Why don't you talk about both of those a little bit? I think location, we kind of dived into a little bit, mentioning some of these markets, but also the proof of performance as well.
Yeah, I think something we've been learning really in the last 2 years at Lime is that how do we build a campaign around what proof of performance you're looking for? And so if you're looking to have a bunch of samples handed out, then we should probably do guerrilla marketing and hit as many events as we can to just throw out samples. And if you are chasing, we have a client that we work with, FSI Industries. They have one very niche person that works in a hospital that they're pursuing. And so their proof of performance is very different than handing out a bunch of samples. But we've been trying to kind of have the beginning conversations more around what your proof of performance actually looks like, and then kind of building the campaign and the budget around that.
Exactly. But what does cost actually look like? Well, once again, you joined us for this webinar, so we're going to set you up for success. We want to offer you a little pace and piece when it comes to these projects that you're working on. And when you're going into them, we want to make sure you're properly prepared as to what you need to know for these experiential projects, should you, and we hope you do, work with us at Lime Media. So because of that, here are 3 practical planning bands that you can use when you're having those open conversations within your agency or with the brand, and where these buckets kind of fall. So let's go ahead and talk about the good, the better, and best of these bands when we talk about bucket pricing. So go ahead, Piper. We'll start with number 1, 100 to 200K for the good band.
Yeah, so good. I mean, it's what it says here. It would be 1 to 2 markets, a few days. We're taking something that's already existing in our fleet, which wouldn't be the Blue Diamond Almond. It would be maybe like a stage trailer. As Troy has mentioned, we have over 250 vehicles in our fleet, so it's not hard to find something existing to use. And then it's making some light to immediate customization. There are some trailers, like we did a project with Heineken at Walmart, and their sheer KPIs were to hand out as many samples of Heineken as they could, and they had a low budget. So we vinyl wrapped an Airstream and we sent it out. That would kind of sit in this $100,000 range where it's nothing crazy custom, but it can still have a wide reach just depending on what your goals are.
Exactly. And then we jump into better. Now, this is, I would probably say, the most common that we normally deal with at Lime Media. Sure, we do the 1 market, 3 2-day activations, and sometimes we do the absolute major campaigns that we'll get to in the best. But better is pretty much that sweet spot. That is the one that we get asked about a lot, correct?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, obviously, everyone wants something as shiny and custom as possible without spending half of their marketing budget. So we typically end up in this better range where you hit enough markets to have a true, capture a large audience, but it's not an insane spend to go pass through to your client.
Exactly. And then, of course, you're going into the $500,000 to 7-figure activations and experiential marketing. That's true ROI. That's where it is laser focused on some of these that you're talking about. It is still 3 to 8 markets, similar to what you see in Better, but this is a true, deeper, more detailed production than anything we've talked about in the past, correct?
Yeah, this would be, again, more of the Blue Diamond Almond example. You're taking something that has never existed before and you're bringing it to life. So we have built custom crazy trailers from the ground up before. We've done driving monsters, and that would kind of sit in that $500,000 to $1 million range. It could also, maybe the build isn't the thing like we talked about that drives the cost, but you're wanting to do a 12-month activation, and that would fall somewhere in this range as well.
Exactly. But also something to keep in mind for everyone that's watching us during this XM webinar: the good, the better, the best. Doesn't matter which 3 you go with. We talked about one of the true capabilities when it comes to ROI that we handle: data. And when you're wanting to get that impressions tracking, you want to retarget ads, you can do that on any scale, whether it's the good, the better, or the best. Okay. Last thing we're going to get to before we jump into the questions and the poll that we have over here: 6 ways to look bigger without spending bigger. So here's 6 ways that you can truly get ROI back without spending a lot. Number 1, pick your asset, then customize the pieces that matter most. Definitely want to do that. You want to make sure the asset that you choose is the right one. You don't want to go too big if you don't need to. You also don't want to go too small if you need to have a bigger impact. Also, choose a region and maximize activations days there. Hey, listen, if you need our drivers to be out there hours upon hours, make sure we talk with our account team. We'll properly set you up. We want you to get the ROI that you expect out of these activations. So maximize the activation days and the time that we're out there. And then Piper, go and elaborate a little bit on 3 and 4, securing the audience and the one strong hero moment.
Yeah, securing your audience through strategic partnerships. That would be, instead of paying an arm and a leg for permitting, maybe you are a retail company and you have some retail partners that you already work with. Let's go and activate in their parking lot so that you can save a little bit of funds through activating with strategic partnerships versus pulling up in a random location that might cost a lot of money to permit. And then number 4, I think this is my favorite, choosing one strong hero moment that can outperform a lot of smaller moving parts. I had a conversation with a client a few days ago, and they were wanting to do, I'm not kidding, custom popsicles, custom t-shirts, custom stuffed animals, scratch off tickets, stickers, literally like a whole list of all these different giveaway items that they wanted to have. And we had a conversation about, like, you're spending way too much money, and why don't we do one big thing that's going to draw in your audience, make them share this on socials, instead of giving them a ton of small moving parts that can kind of get lost in translation. So that
Exactly. Exactly. And the last 2 ways to look bigger without spending bigger, before we get to your questions and talk about the poll, custom asset can be rebranded, restructured, and reactivated. Understand that. You take an asset, you take one of our vehicles, you want to use that same vehicle, but you want it to look different without spending a lot more money. We just rebrand it. We basically just, like, maybe we take off the vinyl and add new vinyl, add new logos, whatever else, use the vehicle that you have, the asset, to its maximum potential, and then build the journey around the measurements, not as an afterthought. I think that's pretty much self-explanatory there. All right, let's go and dive into some questions. But first, let's get to the poll today. When leadership asks, what do we get for the money? Which answer is the hardest to defend? We have attendance, impressions, sales or leads, all of the above. Shocker, all of the above. Number 1 answer that we have today. And I think that's probably something a lot of people have to deal with, right, Piper, when it comes to what are we getting for the money? And we hear that a lot from the clients as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think even in the last 2 years, the conversation has shifted so much, where 2 years ago it was like, well, we handed out 3,000 samples and that was enough proof of performance. And now with data and technology and AI, everyone just wants kind of more proof of performance than they used to. So impressions and sales and leads make sense. And it's something that I think people are pushing towards more now than they were a few years ago.
Absolutely. So let's talk about a little, some more of these questions that we have coming in. And once again, thanks everyone for the engagement on the poll. We truly appreciate that. Number 1, are brands asking for different things now than they were even a year ago? I know for me, we keep talking about the data. I think the data is truly important. Obviously, we have 100+ LED trucks when we do out of home activations that are constantly running different analytics to compile data, but we're doing that a lot more now than we did in the past for experiential, right?
Yeah, and another thing that's just funny is the trend just goes up and down throughout the years. And so we'll have a year where last year it was Airstreams, and this year it's gone back to huge Prevo buses like AT&T. So, I would say it's kind of one and the same. Like, maybe they're asking the question differently, but it's kind of the same end result, where it's like they want an audience, they want to sell stuff, and they want a cool vehicle.
Yeah, I feel like we should open our own university at this point. We have so many school buses. There's so many school bus activations all the time. It's crazy that we have as many as we do. But once again, that wasn't the big request a year or 2 ago, and now everyone wants to get involved in that. What's been your favorite program you have done? Coincidentally, speaking of school buses, the clamshell school bus that we did for Bear Bells, for me, that was a great activation, because as we talk about ROI, they wanted to reach a mass scale. So they went for a full national tour that include engagement, not only with the school bus, but they worked with their partners on the social media side. So they were able to set them up properly to get viral content And it wasn't just all about the school bus. It was about the whole picture. So for me, that was one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's a good one. There's another question in here that says, how much time does it take to make these events? It's different for everyone, but for Lime, our typical lead time is 4 to 6 weeks. So from sign off to making the first activation, because we do everything in house and we own so many assets, we're able to hit that within 4 to 6 weeks. Permitting and securing locations could take a little bit longer than that, but the build takes 4 to 6 weeks.
Yep, absolutely. And by the way, keep dropping in your questions. We're going through these live as we look at them. David, he asked, what's the difference in planning for a one-day activation versus a season-long program? There's a lot of planning that's involved in that. One-day activations are typically something that we burn and churn all the time because we're having to do those in different markets. But you can talk a lot about this, Piper. The season-long programs, the ones that are on the road, there's a lot of detail and a lot of things that have to be in place in order to have that work out properly.
Yeah, obviously, if you're planning a one-day activation, we can find one location and mark it on socials and go there and then you're done. Versus a season-long program, you have to be a lot more strategic about where you're going and why, and then what your overall budget is and what your campaign goals are. So that would be the main difference. With Lime, we're as turnkey as you want us to be. And so we will handle, the routing and locations and build out and all of that. But I would say that's the biggest difference, is just the amount of time and thought that goes into a season-long program.
Absolutely. Kelly asks, is there any concept that hasn't worked? You know what? I'm going to be really honest with you. Very few. And the reason why is because we strategically want to sit down with our clients, with the branch, with the agencies, to really truly map out exactly what they're trying to achieve in this. And that, once again, goes back to the original conversation of us talking about ROI. If you have a certain activation going to a certain market, let's say we're going to be in, downtown New York City. Well, do you need a 53-foot double expandable trailer in downtown New York City? Or can we achieve what your goal is and what your return on investment is with a smaller asset that has more of a premium build out? We try to work through all those conversations instead of just getting the signed estimate going and hoping the best, right?
Yeah,
we never want to
we say here a lot is that sometimes we have to save our clients from themselves. And so, Kelly, if you were to come to me with maybe a really cool idea, but it doesn't match what your clients are trying to do, then out of love, I'd be like, hey, we've seen this before. Maybe, let's activate here instead of here, or maybe let's build out to Troy's point. Like, let's not take a 53-foot trailer when you have a 10 by 10 space or something like that. So because of that, I think there are very few concepts that haven't worked.
Absolutely. Another question coming in here. Have you done any events at community colleges? And do you know if they are easy to work with or if they prohibit things like that? We've done many university activations. I did an activation with one of our vintage vehicles called a Citroen. It's a French ambulance. And I did that with Kendra Scott that went to multiple universities. And then, of course, HBCUs. We've done that with, I believe, Nike and Jordan. There's always complexities, correct, Piper, when you're working with colleges, which is why sometimes we look for the high foot traffic areas that's not necessarily on campus, but very close to, thus being off campus.
Yeah, the only thing that I would say might prohibit something like a college activation is what asset you're activating with. If you come to us at the beginning and you tell us you want to be at a college campus, we probably will say, well, let's not use a container because of the way you have to unload it and drop it onto the ground. And some campuses don't want you doing that. And then the other thing that could make it a little challenging is sometimes your permitting department is ran by college students, which just makes it interesting, and comms maybe aren't super clear sometimes, but we've been in business for so long and we've done so many activations. Thank you for the laughing face on that one, Selena. We've done so many activations that we've seen it all and can make pretty much anything work.
Exactly. And by the way, the last question we'll get to before we let everyone go, because we know that your time is very valuable and we appreciate you being here. Mike asks, what platform do you use to measure impressions for billboard trucks, our LED trucks? We have what's called essentially an impressions beacon. So we have technology that we put on there. I'm very old, if you can't tell. So it kind of looks like a modem. Piper's Googling the word modem as we speak. But it's something that we have on the vehicles, and that's how we use it to track impressions and data analytics and things like that. It's just an internal piece of technology that we use up here at Lime Media to track that. But once again, this was just a quick webinar that we wanted to go through with everyone. We hope everyone enjoyed it and you learned a little bit more about ROI. So Piper, before we go, want everyone to know your email and your contact information in order for them to reach out to you.
Yes, it is. Everyone can take out your pen and paper and write this down. It's pocray@lime-media.com. It's on this slide. And then troy@lime-media.com. Don't hesitate to reach out to either of us or both of us with any questions you have from this or any campaigns that you want to put on. We would love to talk to you and think about strategic ways to partner together.
Absolutely. And if you have any questions about anything, like Piper said, reach out to us. We love to respond to emails and texts. If not, then our head honcho Heath will let us know that we have wasted too much time and we haven't responded to someone. So we love to engage with you. So absolutely reach out to us. Give us your time, and we're definitely here to give you ours as well. Thank you so much for joining us on the webinar. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank y'all.